even though Ben McAdoo had a ridiculous press conference last week. I don't know if you guys saw that, where he started off the press conference saying that Sam Darnold is our quarterback, and by the end said, I probably shouldn't have said that.
What a legend.
So funny. So funny.
Fantastic press
Checking
conference.
himself.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Monkey Knife Fight Live. I'm Dan Watkins. Joining me from Rotowire.com, Nick Whalen and John McKechnie. Boys, how we doing?
We're doing well. I as you guys can see, I'm kind of working on getting my mustache back. John's is better than ever. I feel like I should have not even tried. Kind of forgot that we were going to be on the same call today, and I feel just vastly inferior right now.
But I don't think you should. I mean, every mustache is there at one point or another. You know, it just give it time, give it patience, and trust your process. I feel good about the beginnings of the mustache you got going on there. As you can tell, I just got back from Florida. You can tell by there's still some sunburn on my neck, but no other visible tan to speak of. Nick was in Montana and lives in Wisconsin, is yet a golden bronze god by comparison, despite me sitting out on the beach in Pensacola for, like 2 days in a row, 3 days in a row. But other than that, recharged, refreshed, and I'm pumped for the draft. This is such a fun, time of the sports calendar, plus NBA playoffs, obviously we'll get to. So yeah, feeling good.
Yeah, John, the stash is looking ready to go for Thursday night and round one. Looking good. All right, let's move on. Let's talk a little NFL draft. I don't know about you guys, but I used to be a huge NFL draft just dork. In high school, we had two big chalkboards in my parents' basement, and me and a couple of my buddies would make our own mock drafts on the chalkboard. One would be our mock. The other one, we would actually grid out and do the actual selections. I think the best I ever got was 9 picks right in one draft, which is not bad, 9 out of 32 in the first round. But I obviously don't have the chalkboard here anymore, like Woody Page on Around the Horn, or else I would have my mock draft behind me. John, you put up a wonderful mock draft last week for Rotowire.com. And I'm just going to be completely honest here, because your mock draft was the first one I read in probably a month. So when I saw you had Trayvon Walker going 1 overall, I thought you were trolling everybody. And then
That's fair.
Yeah, I thought the Georgia thing, I go, okay, this is funny. John's making some jokes here. And then I start clicking on other drafts, and everybody else has Trayvon Walker going number 1 overall as well. And now he's the betting favorite as of Wednesday this week. He's like minus 300 to go first overall. And we'll get to a little bit more on Walker in a minute, but I'm just wondering, do you guys have any draft traditions or anything like that for this week?
So let's see, way back when I was a young lad, and this was before the NFL draft, really kind of capitalized the weeknight part of this and made it prime time. So on Saturday, they would have rounds 1 through 3, and then rounds 4 through 7, kind of rapid fire on Sunday. So my dad would take me up to the Ravens stadium. The Ravens would have a draft party going on where you can go on the field and, throw a football through a hoop and that kind of stuff. So always enjoyed that. That always just kind of made me enjoy the draft. And then, as I got older, I started to become like you, Dan, and obviously look at me now, but it's such a fun kind of wild, crazy, confluence of so many different things. You love these players in college, you watch them for all these years, and then all of a sudden you're tearing them down brutally. It's Derek Stingley, best cornerback I've ever seen. Wait a second. No, Sauce Gardner is better. I've just arbitrarily decided, having not played a game in several months either way, no, it must be Gardner. So, I mean, it's just funny how it all goes, and paying such close attention to it like I have from a work perspective over the last, 6 years or something. It's really, transformed my appreciation for it. But I love it. I miss the days of the old suits. I mean, the same goes for old NBA draft pictures of just the hilarious suits and outfits that you get going on. But or Tack McKinley bringing a picture of his grandmother up onto the stage. That kind of thing. So I love all sorts of goofiness, and I'm glad that we're getting it back in person this year. I know that the year that the pandemic really started in 2020, they were going to have it in Vegas, and there was just so many great delusions of grandeur of how crazy that was going to be. I'm glad that we're getting it back this year, and Vegas is the kind of first one post. So I'm really excited for that. I hope that they use some sort of what's the Cirque du Soleil, like, some sort of trapeze act to like get Trayvon Walker to trapeze down from the Bellagio, and maybe drop kick Roger Goodell, that sort of thing.
Very good. Nick, what about you, man? Another year, once again, your Jags going first on the clock.
Yeah, back-to-back, two-time defending number 1 overall pick selectors, Jacksonville Jaguars. No, man, for that part of it sucks big time because it's a terrible draft to have the number 1 pick. It feels to me a lot like the Cavs having the number 1 pick in the Anthony Bennett draft, where Trayvon Walker is now the Anthony Bennett of this situation. So I'm like desperately hoping that in the next 28 hours the Jaguars find a way to trade out. They obviously need. They could make 12 first-round picks and would still not even have a top 15 roster in the NFL. So. I mean, obviously it was nice getting Lawrence last year. I'm still very much in on him, despite it being a little bit of an up and down rookie year. But yeah, it'd be really nice if there was a no doubter, Joey Bosa type of player sitting at the top here. But it's going to be fun. I mean, I think I probably feel the same way about the draft as you guys. A lot of memories as a kid of going over to friends' houses. We'd I remember bringing a TV. This is before TVs were this thin. They were this thin at that point. Bringing a TV over so we can have the draft on one and then play a Madden franchise and do our own draft on the other TV. Things like that have become much easier than they were in 2006. So that took a ton of work. I remember being on very vividly remember, I don't know, probably 6th or 7th grade, being on the way to a basketball tournament out of town and forcing my dad while he was driving to quiz me on who was going to be drafted at each draft slot. So he would be like, all right, Washington's on the clock at 7. Who are they taking? And I had this pre-rehearsed answer, probably went 0 for 32 if we're being honest. But the NFL draft is the best. My interest has not waned whatsoever. I think I like it more than the NBA draft, which is saying a lot.
Yeah, NFL draft, fun time. I think there was right when Blackberries first came out. So what was that, 2007, 2006, 2007, right in that area. My dad just got one, no idea how to use it, but I had a little league game, and I'm playing. I remember it's 1 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. So it's right lined up with round 4 in the NFL draft. I'm running over at after the inning ends and who the Patriots take in round 4 or whatever. He's like, you think I know how to use this thing? But yeah, glad now.
Well, let me ask you guys before we get into the picks, how do you feel now that what are we a decade into this now of the new format, of Thursday, Friday, Saturday? How do you guys feel about that versus, what did they used to do? Was it the first 2 rounds and then the rest, or the first 3?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we're about 10 years in. I think, I think we're all roughly the same age. So yeah, I think maybe the Matthew Stafford draft. So 2009, I think was the first time that they did the prime time. And I love it. And from a work perspective, it makes it a lot easier when it's a little bit more spread out. First round piece of cake for me and the rest of the Rotowire HQ guys. Rounds 2 and 3 on Friday, a little bit more involved, a little bit more rapid fire, but not too bad. But nothing saves me from the hell that is Saturday of the NFL draft when it comes to you're just cranking out notes on guys who may never otherwise get a note on rotowire.com. But hey, this Eastern Michigan guy had a good 3-cone drill. Let's see how that translates at guard in the NFL.
Yeah, John, I was going to ask you, is Saturday this week your busiest day of the year?
Yes, I'm not going to say that I'm dreading it, but but it's a real hectic, especially when things kind of spin out of control, starting in the 5th round. That's when picks are announced long before they even get to them on TV and stuff. So you're 3-4 notes behind, and you're just kind of freaking out. So that's how Saturday is going to go for me. So for all the viewers and listeners out there on Saturday afternoon, when you're having fun, just casually watching the draft, think of me in the take minds.
Another one of my sneaky favorite parts of the draft is round 1. Is when a couple of the beat guys are 3 picks ahead of the commissioner, and it's just great. It's just makes it a lot easier for work purposes too. But anyways, moving on, let's talk about the commissioner here for a second. Are we going to get any weird Goodell moments? I mean, I guess we're going to get at least one. So we should put the line at 2.5 weird Roger Goodell moments. I mean, there was the candy jar where he was like, hey, look at me, everyone. I'm human, just like you. I like candy, a couple of years ago. Then they brought the chair last year to the draft. Any weird Goodell moments you're expecting?
I think
we're going to get them for sure. statistically, I mean, I always think I'm actually pretty impressed with Roger Goodell, because as somebody who I have a long history of struggling with like, hey, what's going on, man? Handshakes, like even if it's like a close friend of mine, you never know. Or like, in the year 2022, you could be looking for like a quick knuck. You could be doing like kind of the bro handshake. I'm a more fan of like lead with the hand and just get more of a professional handshake. Like he used to do like 300 of those. Actually, I guess not that many. How many guys end up walking across the stage? 30, 50?
Like 22, I think.
Okay. I feel like some guys like end up just showing
on the first
up
round. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll say over the course of 3 days, he's maybe doing 50 nationally televised handshakes. Like to me, that's kind of a nightmare. So I know he takes a lot of heat, deservedly so, but I think he deserves some credit for pretty much nailing almost all of those handshakes or hugs.
Yeah.
Well said. And there aren't a lot of guys in Goodell's corner and especially when it comes to social proficiency. But I think that in this case, no, he is pretty good as far as that goes. But to answer Dan's question, I wonder if he'll kind of take it upon himself to be the entertainment a little bit, especially on Thursday night, just because this draft, it lacks star power. Like, let's be honest about that. Like, I think there are some very good players that are going to be selected on Thursday night, but there isn't a Trevor Lawrence in this class or anything close to that. It just doesn't quite exist. So I do wonder if Goodell will kind of want to fill the air a little bit and take it upon himself and in the process just fail miserably.
Did you guys see the Laramie Tunzel thing that he did?
Yes, the NFT.
He's minting his NFT.
That's so awesome. And I've actually already purchased it.
Have you? Oh, very good. Nick, that's going to look great on the wall.
It's already been fungible down to $0, unfortunately.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a sneaky great side storyline to the draft. Some of the big ones, though, John, as you kind of hinted at, we don't know who's going to go number one. I mean, it seems like it's going to be Trayvon Walker now, but compared to past years where we had Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, all leading in there, we knew. We're still about 24 hours out recording this show here, and we don't know for certain who's going to go number one. Are you, though, fairly confident in it being Trayvon Walker?
I wouldn't be if not for like the mounting evidence to suggest that yes, the Jags are going to take Trayvon Walker, and the way that I've been following the betting odds for this type of thing since the combine, and Aiden Hutchinson was the prohibitive favorite 3-4 weeks ago, even a month and a half ago. It's his spot to lose, and then Trayvon Walker does what he does at the combine. And he vaults himself from being, basically not on the board at most places to be the first overall pick to like suddenly he's got the 5th best odds. Suddenly he's got the 2nd best odds. Suddenly he's leading. Suddenly he's leading by a lot. So that just leads me to believe that it is going to be Walker. I think that either him or Hutchinson would be a good fit in that front 7 for Jacksonville. I think, Hutchinson, that I don't love him as a stand-up outside linebacker, and presumably he'd be like taking like Kayvon Chaison's role. I don't necessarily know what his fit is going to be like on the Lions necessarily, but I think that's where he's going to go. I think that's his basement outcome. I think it is him ending up in Detroit, and that or worst case scenario draft slot wise. But I think that'd be cool for the Lions to get a Michigan guy like him. But Walker, that to anyone out there like that. They're going to see his box score and they're not going to be impressed.
Yeah,
this isn't like a Myles Garrett thing where the first overall pick is clearly the best player coming out in college football. He just happens to not play quarterback this time around. Like, he is not Myles Garrett, but he obviously has crazy physical tools. He played on a great defense. He did his job on that defense, on that defensive line. There are so many other playmakers on that defense, so you can kind of forgive some of the lack of production. And he was kind of just a rotational guy in his 2 years prior to kind of breaking out as a junior this past year. So he's not your conventional number 1 overall pick. I think to draw that Anthony Bennett comparison is good. It reminds me a little bit of like the 2013 NFL draft, where is it going to be Luke Joeckel? Sorry, I should have said trigger warning first, or Jake Matthews.
I'm done.
I'm out. I told you guys beforehand. But yeah, I think that you need to temper your expectations as to like Walker being like that star, and I think this sets up to be one of those potentially great draft busts. If I'm being honest, just I feel like he's being pushed up a little bit too much because of those physical traits, but I think at this stage, it's hard to imagine anyone else going number one but him.
And Nick, bringing this over to you. Let's say you're the GM of your beloved Jacksonville Jaguars. Who are you taking first overall?
If I'm Trent Baalke first, I'm resigning in shame and handing the job off to someone capable. I don't know. Like I said, I would be doing everything I could to trade. I would even be willing to take like 90 cents on the dollar, which normally when you're trading out of the number one pick, I think you end up outdoing the value because teams are just so desperate because they fall in love with, usually a quarterback at that spot. You could do pretty well, but in a draft like this, that's no guarantee. I would be happy to pick up, even if it's like a 2023 first rounder to move down. I just don't think there's anybody here who is changing the course of your franchise. I guess if I'm forced to make the pick, I would probably take Hutchinson. I think it's safe. At worst, it feels like you're getting like a very good borderline Pro Bowl defensive end. He's not going to be a bust. And it's not going to be a situation where like Trayvon Walker, I mean, this could be Derek Harvey 2.0 to bring up another past horror story for the Jags. And maybe it turns out really well. I get that. But like one thing, like I love that everybody's like, well, Trent Baalke drafted Aldon Smith and he sees a lot of Aldon Smith in this guy. Like, is that a good thing? Like, do we want another Aldon Smith?
Fair point. Do you guys think Deebo Samuel gets traded Thursday night? John?
I was more convinced of that this time a week ago. It sounds like San Francisco is trying to work it out with Deebo and, get him extended to where, he's making the money that he obviously deserves to be making without having to trade the best player on that offense. So I'm less inclined to say that Deebo gets moved on Thursday, but I don't think you can write off that possibility. And I think at the same time, you have a team like the Jets that, as I put in my mock, like the value matches up. I think that the Niners, having given up what they did to get Trey Lance a year ago, they would love to have a first round pick. And getting the 10th one would be a pretty sweet deal for the Niners if they did have to part ways with Deebo Samuel. But I just imagine they're going to do everything that they can to keep him.
All right, very good. So we'll get to some player props that we have on MKF here in just a few minutes. But first, I came up with some questions for you guys as well. These are not on our rundown, so you guys are going into these blind, but I think you're going to enjoy them. So, John, I'm going to start off with you here on this one. More or less 4.5 Georgia players taken in round one?
I'm going to lean towards the more. So we got Trayvon Walker, we got Jordan Davis, Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean is a question mark, but I think he'll still sneak in there. So then the question is one of Lewis Cine or Devontae Wyatt, and I think that one of those guys will go. So I think 5 Georgia players get selected in the first round.
All right, Nick, more or less 5.5 wide receivers taken in round one. The record is 7 taken in 2004.
Let's see. I'm looking at some of the odds right now. 5.5. Yeah, I think we get to 6, right? I think you get Wilson, Williams, London, Olave, Burks. And then the swing players are going to be either Watson or potentially Jahan Dotson, maybe George Pickens. I think we get to 6. Yeah, I'll go more on that.
All right, John, more or less 3.5 quarterbacks taken in the first round.
I think it's going to be less, and I might even go less than 2.5. I think that at the end of the day, we know that Willis and Pickett are going to go in the first. I don't know if there's a team that really loves Desmond Ridder quite enough to go first round on him. And of course, the extra wrinkle there is that teams love to have that 5th year of control on a player. So you could see some potential movement from a team picking early in the second round back into the first round, a la the Ravens with Lamar Jackson a few years ago. That could certainly happen, but Ridder is not Lamar Jackson, or a player of that quality, even if their play styles are different. I don't think that Ridder is as ready to light the NFL on fire. So I don't see it happening again. I just laid out the scenario in which it could, but I think at the end of the day, we are just going to see 2 first-round quarterbacks this time around.
Yeah, the last time a quarterback didn't go in the top 3 picks, by the way, was 2013. EJ Manuel was the first quarterback taken in that draft at 16. This is a question for both of you guys, but we'll start with Nick. The player who will have the best fantasy season as a rookie is?
Best fantasy season as a rookie. I mean, do we have to default for that to be a quarterback? I don't know. I mean, I think I would probably take the cop out and say Garrett Wilson. I mean, it's obviously very dependent
on where you end up. And I think, we've seen so many receivers these last couple of years just step in and, not only be good, but be like Pro Bowl, potentially, all pro type of caliber guys. And I don't know that we're going to see, Wilson to me feels like he's like a half step below, the Jeffersons and the Chases of the world, but that doesn't mean he can't be a really good fantasy contributor.
Yep. John?
Yeah, I like that Wilson call. And, I think there's a really good chance that he's the first receiver off the board. But I'll go with someone who I don't even expect goes in the first round. I think it's going to be Breece Hall. I think that he's the best running back in this class. He probably ends up with a team that's just looking to bolster its backfield, where they pretty much have all their other positions relatively well stocked. Buffalo, of course, is a trendy possible landing spot for him. I don't know if they pony up that first round pick for him, but I think Breece Hall, early second round, depending on, if it's a good landing spot, I think he ends up being the rookie to target in your redraft leagues this year.
All right. And last one here. If you had to select one player in this draft that will make the Hall of Fame, who are you picking? John?
Let's go with, I think Stingley's a beast. I think that he's so good. I mean, the way that he dominated true freshman season at LSU, that's not something that's fluky. I know he got injured this past season, and 2020 was just kind of a mess for LSU, but I think you got to look past that. You got to look at that freshman year film, and that's just a difference maker, a lockdown corner. So I will go with Derek Stingley at LSU.
Nick?
That's a really, really good call. I like that one a lot. I think there's a chance that he very quickly reminds people, why he was projected as maybe even like a top 3 guy a couple of years ago before those down years at LSU. I mean, quarterback wise, it's hard to say. I am a very big Malik Willis believer. I think he's coming along at a perfect time for his type of skill set to succeed. But Hall of Fame, seems a little iffy. I think I'll just, kind of go with a double cop out and go Garrett Wilson again, right? I mean, I think we're going to at some point kind of have to maybe recalibrate how we evaluate receivers, because if you're a good receiver in this era, your numbers are going to be, really inflated compared to, especially the 80s and 90s type of era receivers. But, if I think he's going to be the best fantasy player right away, he's probably the guy that after one season is on a better track than anybody else.
I thought we were going to get a little love for Leo Chenal there, the linebacker from Wisconsin. But for me, I'm going to go with Sauce Gardner. I think he really stepped up big time for Cincinnati down the stretch there last year. And I think he's going to be a hell of a pro too. Big body, can make plays, great arms, long arms too, which I know that's a big thing with the draft. So anyways, moving on, let's just kind of rapid fire here and go through a couple of our props on MKF. John, we'll start with you. More or less the 29.5 selection for Desmond Ridder.
So, all right, let's lay the ground rules. So more would be he gets picked after that, after 29.5. I will get, sorry, my brain, it breaks really easily this time of year. But I will take the more. I think that we see Ridder go early second round.
All right, Nick, Jamison Williams, wide receiver, Alabama, 12.5. This is more or less.
I'm going to go more. It does seem like teams are maybe starting to become a little more willing to ignore the injury. It seemed like he would maybe struggle to be a first round guy a couple months ago. And he's, steadily risen up draft boards despite not really being able to do a whole lot physically to promote that. But I think that's still a little bit high for me. I'll go more.
All right, John, Kyle Hamilton, Notre Dame safety, 11.5 is his selection pick from MKF.
This is tricky. I mean, it's right on where I put him in my mock. I put him at 12 to the Vikings. I'm going to stick to that. I think that we've seen some late helium from a handful of other players that are going to sneak into the top 10. So I think that pushes a guy like Hamilton, who plays a non-premium position like safety, and it has, good athleticism, but maybe not as good as we were hoping going into the combine. I think we see him in the mid-teens.
Nick, your guy, Malik Willis, 10.5. Will a quarterback be taken in the top 10 picks?
And 10.5, that's right on. I mean, obviously, like John said, you could have teams trading up. I'm going to go less. I know it seems like people have just gone kind of roller coaster on this quarterback class, but I remember telling John a couple months ago, Malik Willis is going to go probably higher than he should, and he's going to be the first quarterback taken because it doesn't matter how bad the class is. Teams need quarterbacks, and the idea of saying well, we'll just wait till next year. Yeah, that sounds great, but a lot of teams don't have that kind of time. If you're sitting in the front office, it's pretty hard to just say like, all right, we'll just try to be bad again this year. That's a lot easier said than done. You can't really get away with that as much in the NFL as you can in baseball or basketball. So I think we see teams, even if they're Malik Willis doesn't grade out as well as Bryce Young, or whoever else next year projects to. I think we're going to see teams get desperate, and we're going to see someone either jump up, or a team like Seattle could pop them in the top 10.
Yeah, I think the Carolina Panthers have that 9th overall selection, and they could be in the market for a quarterback there, even though Ben McAdoo had a ridiculous press conference last week. I don't know if you guys saw that, where he started off the press conference saying that Sam Darnold is our quarterback, and by the end said, I probably shouldn't have said that out.
What a legend.
So funny.
Fantastic press
Checking himself.
Anyways, John, Devontae Wyatt, Georgia defensive lineman, 27.5, more or less.
More. That's rich for me. I like Wyatt. He's a bit of an older player. I know that the combine was good and everything for him, but I think that there are some other guys, maybe like Travis Jones out of UConn, plays a similar position that I think would go ahead of him. And the board doesn't set up great for a defensive lineman at that part. So I'm going to go with Moore.
All right. And last but not least, we have Treylon Burks, Nick, wide receiver, Arkansas, 22.5, more or less. The Green Bay Packers are picking right there at 22.
Yeah, I feel like this is just where are the Packers picking, and let's make that one the line. I'm getting a little nervous because I as you guys know, I've kind of become a secondary Packers fan living here in Wisconsin. And the Jaguars have just been such a destitute franchise that it's a lot more fun to pay attention to the Packers. I can say that. And a lot of mocks that I've been reading, a lot of receivers being mocked there. I don't know if a lot of experts are trying to zag because receivers seem so obvious, but you're seeing a lot of looking at the ESPN mock. We got a Kenyon Green, the guard out of Texas A&M, going to Green Bay. We'll see. I think if Treylon Burks is on the board, I would be more than happy with that. It's an interesting receiver class because it's so deep and there's a lot of talent, but none of those guys feel like Jamar Chase. Like you have to get him in the top 5. We could get all the way to 7 or 8 with no receivers off the board. And then in picks, 9 through 20, we could have 5 or 6 receivers go. So it's really hard to project, but I think there's going to be a run on receivers kind of in the early teens. And, it could be Green Bay at 22, or it could be another team behind them, like Kansas City, that feels like, hey, we need a receiver. We need to jump up. I think Treylon Burks is kind of one of those guys who's in that, to use a McKechnie term, that gaggle of receivers who's going to be off the board before pick 23.
Yep. The Chiefs are an interesting team to watch here Thursday night. Actually, the entire weekend. They have 12 picks. They're not going to come out of this with 12 players. So I think they're very well positioned to move around the draft board if they want to. All right, guys. Anything else before we wrap up?
Nick is boots on the ground up there in Wisconsin. There is an impending sense of doom here in Atlanta as to what they're going to do. They need everything. And they need a receiver badly. Like Nick said, there is not a Jamar Chase in this class. You take Garrett Wilson, like he can be very good, but like you spend the 8th pick on him, and there's literally nothing else. You have like the ghost of Marcus Mariota throwing it to him. I'm just going to ask who's the quarterback. So yeah, it's a tough scene down here. And there's so many directions that they need to go in. And the problem is, I was looking at other teams' draft capital as to like who might want to trade up, and like there's just not going to be anyone that wants to pay the price to move up to the 8th spot. I don't think so. They're just kind of stuck, and the reaction from Falcons Nation down here should be one to watch on Thursday night, because it will invariably be it will have the same kind of like just pure anger that we're used to seeing out of like a Jets draft.
Oh, good. Love it. Bring it on. Good stuff, guys. All right, that's going to do it for us on MKF Live this week. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page. You can follow all of us on Twitter. All of our Twitter handles are on there. I won't make you guys say them this week. So anyways, thanks, guys, and enjoy the draft and the rest of the NBA playoffs.